I'm Jamie from Not So Wimpy Teacher, and I'm continuing a series of videos I've been doing all about how to teach writing. And so this video is going to focus on grading writing, how to get some grades from our students to add to the grade report, the report cards. If you've missed any of my other videos, you're going to want to go back and watch those, as I've already talked about mini lessons and independent writing time and conferencing and so forth. So make sure you check out those videos and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the future ones as well. Okay, so let's jump right into grading writing. First, I want to talk about the writing samples, formal writing samples that you are going to be grading. Okay, I think that some teachers grade too many formal writing samples, and this is a huge struggle for them. They're taking it home at night, and that's not healthy for them to be taking writing home every night, every week. I think you can get writing grades without having to take formal writing samples home too often. Okay, and so I'm going to kind of tell you what I did and maybe see if that will fit within the rules that your school has set for you. All right, first of all, if you've been watching my videos, then you probably understand about my masterpieces, and I've mentioned my on-demands, but I'm going to just briefly go over them again. At the beginning of each of my 8-week units, students start with a pre-assessment, an on-demand writing sample that they do prior to any of the mini lessons. At the beginning of personal narrative unit, they're going to be given a prompt and asked to write a personal narrative. Now, I do grade that on demand, but I do not put that grade in the grade book. It is a pre-test. They haven't been given the lessons yet, and it would be so unfair to give them a grade on something that you have not yet taught. Okay, but I still grade it. And here's why. There's really two things that I get out of it. For me as a teacher, I can see where my class is. It's like that little bit of a screenshot into what their level is now. It allows me to see where the gaps are right away. It also helps me to set those conferencing groups that I talked about a couple videos ago, because I like when they have similar goals, and so on that first pre-assessment I use it to kind of pick those groups so that I don't have my highest writer and the same conference group as my lowest writer. Also, that pre-assessment, I give it back to my students. It's actually one of the lessons in my lesson plan. If you use my writing units, I give it back to the students. We discuss what the rubric means, and they set goals for themselves. It helps to get them invested, and the goals are something that we remind them about throughout the unit, and we head back to at the end of the unit to see how they've done with their goals. Okay, so I do grade it. I just don't put it in the grade book. Now, I do have 3 other big pieces each quarter that I will grade and use in the grade book. That will be my 2 masterpieces. If you recall, we do one masterpiece a little bit slower. We have the mini lessons we're teaching each skill, but when they finish that masterpiece, I do go ahead and grade it and add it to my grade book. Then they start the second masterpiece. This one goes a little bit faster because my mini lessons are just a review of the skills we've already learned, so they go faster and students have more time to write. I often will grade that masterpiece, but sometimes I grade that one orally. And the reason being is it right after they finish their second masterpiece, we do the post-test and on-demand assessment again for the end of the unit. So it's kind of hard to have to grade both of them at once. So a great strategy is to take that last masterpiece and have them read it aloud. They could read it aloud in your conference group. They could read it aloud in front of the whole class. They could make a video. If you're one-to-one, maybe they make a video on their iPad with it. And you can grade for content only. You're not looking at it, so you can't do the mechanics, but you can at least grade for content only. It's easier because it's all being done in class and you don't have to take it home. Then the next day, they do an on-demand post-assessment, and I grade that one as well. So 3 per quarter formal writing samples that I'm going to put on the report card. Now, some tips for grading these. I think they're tricky. Grading writing is very subjective. If you and I were to both grade a piece of writing, we'd come up with a different score probably. That's tough, but the good news is your students are going to be graded by you all year, and so that's part of they're going to get better. They're going to grow from wherever you started to wherever they end up because they're still getting graded by you. But it's always going to be hard. I think it does take a lot of time. One thing I think is super duper important is to use very user-friendly rubrics. Okay? When you look at your rubric, it should make complete sense. It should be simple to understand each category. It should not require a PhD to figure out what they're talking about, okay? So I wrote my own rubrics. They are in all of my writing units. And you can also use the link in this video description to sign up for my free writing email course. And I'll send you these 3 rubrics for free. So they're super, super user-friendly. So user-friendly that I show them to my students after their pre-assessment so that they can set their goals. Okay? I just take a pen as I'm reading and I circle which category they fall into at that time. Use a simple rubric. Okay? A couple of tips I've heard from other teachers. Some teachers, before they start grading, like to make stacks, kind of eyeballing the writing to see what level it looks like, and putting like all their very low ones in one pile, all their kind of medium ones in one pile, and all their high ones in one pile. And that way they're grading all of the lower writers all at once. They're in that mindset. If that works for you, it might be something to try. I struggled with that. I couldn't hack grading all of my lower ones all at once. So you might have to experiment and see what works for you. I like to give myself 1 week to grade a formal writing sample. And so I take the 5 school days, because I shoot to get it done at school. Take the 5 school days and divide the number of students I have by the 5. And I usually have to do about 5 samples per day. And so I work really hard to do those after school, before I go home, or before school, before class is even starting, so I don't have to bring them home, because I hate bringing work home so much. So it kind of motivates me to get through the process. I personally need to grade them in smaller chunks. But I have teacher friends who prefer to take 1 day out of the week and just go through it all and get it all out of the way, because they know they would get behind. They know that by Wednesday they wouldn't be doing 5 a week, and that by Friday they'd end up having to do most of their class anyway, and maybe bringing it home over the weekend. So they know that they can't be committed to 5 a day, so they just like take Monday and say, I'm going to get my writing samples graded today, and so they often bring them home. But it's only that 1 day, and they plow through it and get it done. So you need to decide what your personality is. Are you the type that could commit to 5 a day, or do you need to just pick 1 day from your week, the day that maybe your kids don't have as many activities, and just plow right through them and be done? Okay? But don't grade a writing sample every week. We don't need to do that. There are other ways for us to get grades to add to our grade book for writing than having to grade 25 formal writing samples. It takes a long time, and it's something we need to do, but not something we need to do constantly. All right, here's some other ways we can get some writing grades. This is my very favorite. This works so well. Grade just one small piece of their masterpiece. And you don't even have to, oftentimes you don't actually have to even look at it. You can have them read it to you during conference time, or maybe you're walking just around the class during independent writing time, tapping them and asking them to read a certain part of their story. Conference time works really well. Even maybe during bell work, if writing workshop is already kind of feeling short and a lot of pressure to get everything done, maybe you could do 1 week and say during bell work, I'm going to get this done. So here's an example of how this might work. You have already taught leads. You did the mini lesson, you read the mentor text together, you did the anchor chart and student printable, then they worked on their lead, they picked the best lead for them. And now, maybe during your conference groups, you say, I would like each of you to read me your lead. You've got your little grading checklist right there, and you can decide how many points you want to make it worth and say, well, 5 points will be a super interesting lead. Maybe 3 points will be that they have a lead, but it's not super strong. And 0 will be they didn't even attempt to write a lead. Okay? It's up to you. I wouldn't weight it as high as a writing sample by any means. I would make it worth a lot less points. But by grading just one tiny piece, you've made it much faster on yourself to get a grade, but you're also getting that little snapshot, making sure your writers are on the correct path. It kind of stinks when they turn in their masterpiece and you realize that they didn't get anything that you were teaching. It'd be better to know it ahead of time, wouldn't it? Okay, so grade one small piece. This can be done with many different skills. Let's say you're teaching informational and it's subtopics. You could tell your students, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder during your bell work. What I want you to tell me is the topic of your writing and the 3 subtopics you chose. And you go tap on Jimmy and you say, Jimmy, what's yours? And he would say, my topic is Brontosaurus, and my 3 subtopics are habitat, predators and prey, and extinction. Fantastic. 5 points. Joey understands topics and subtopics. It's a simple grade, but it's still meaningful because you are checking on these small skills that you have already been teaching and they've been practicing. Okay? So I would do this. If you need grades every week, this might be something you do weekly. If you don't need to have a writing grade every week, then maybe you kind of do this every other week. But easy way to just get an idea of where your students are at and give them some points along the way for the different skills they're practicing. All right, the Common Core has speaking and listening standards built in. So if you are a Common Core state, if you have Common Core standards built into your state standards, then don't forget that writing is a fantastic time to get some of those scores if you're required to do it. I know not everyone is, but we were, and so just don't forget. You can get speaking and listening scores during conferencing. After you've really got conferencing going and students are starting to interact with each other and listen to each other's stories and give each other advice and compliments, that's speaking and listening. It's a fabulous way to grade their speaking and listening. If after they finish a masterpiece, you have them present it to a small group or to the class, that's another opportunity to get some speaking and listening grades. You can even get speaking and listening grades from their share time at the end of the lesson. At the end of each of my lesson plans, I include a little share time activity that just takes 5 minutes. And that can be a great way to get some speaking and listening scores, just listening into a few groups each day until you've made it through the class. So if you need speaking and listening scores, don't forget that writing can be a good time to get them. All right, I'm going to talk about these 2 ways to get scores. And I need you to know that it's not something you can do every time you need a writing score, and your school or administration may say it's not okay. They may have told you that you can't do this, but mine never did. Mine would allow this, and so maybe yours will too. If they haven't said you can't do it, it might be worth a try, okay? Completion. Maybe sometimes you've given them a mini task to do. After your lesson, you told them to go back to their seats and to write an ending for their story. You talked about different types of endings. You did your anchor chart. You read some mentor text. You sent them back to do the ending. At the very end of writing or the beginning of the next day or during bell work, could you walk around, have them point to their ending? You don't even have to read it. You're grading that they completed. They did what you asked them to do. I would write down that it was a completion grade, and I would not give it as many points, obviously, as a writing sample. But, you know, sometimes this is a good way to get a score because it gives credit to some of those lower writers who really will struggle with content, but they sure do work hard. They always do what you ask them to do, and I think that's important too. So they attempted it. They did it, and so every now and again, maybe do a completion. And you can have that done during conferences too. Okay, we asked you to add dialogue to your writing a couple of days ago. Can you please all point to one place where you have added dialogue to your writing? Point to one sentence and just give it a quick look. Yep, you all added dialogue. Then you all earned those 3 points, whatever it is you decided, okay? And also very similar is participation grades. I like to use participation grades from time to time. Again, can't be used all the time, or else their writing grade doesn't reflect their actual writing ability. We definitely want their content to be the majority of the points possible. But sometimes it's just participation. Sometimes I'm looking at my group, my conference group, and I think, wow, this group is on fire. Every single one of them is conversing, and I love how they're helping one another. They get some participation points for that. And you can tell them, like, I'm so impressed with your participation in this conference group. And you've all earned your participation points for today. And I don't get participation points every day, but and it encourages them to continue to have quality conferences like that. And that was a valuable conference. They actually learned a lot. You can get participation scores or completion scores for doing the student printables. You can get participation scores for mini lessons and their participation in that. Were they doing the pair shares? Were they on task? Were they listening and participating when you asked for class participation? You can do participation points for even the share time at the end of the lesson. Participation points for staying on task during independent writing time. Did they spend the whole time writing, or did they spend the time talking to their friend and staring at the clock? I think that them following the procedures that we have learned is very valuable, and that rewarding them with some points for doing so every now and again is appropriate. So if you can do that, then maybe you should try that every now and again. Helps you add another extra score to your writing grade, but make sure that the majority of the points that you're putting into your grade book are from your writing samples, okay? All right, I hope these tips have helped to give you an idea of how you can get some of those grades for writing without always doing a formal writing sample. My next video is all about the first week of school, how you're going to introduce the procedures for writing workshop, how you're going to train students so that they're successful with this program all year. So I hope you'll tune into that video. And again, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the videos. In this video description, I do have the link to sign up for my free email course where you can grab those rubrics as well as a bunch of other freebies. So see you next time.